It was record-breaking, innovative, and revolutionary. In the 1972-73 season, Tiny Archibald had one of the most historic individual seasons in NBA history. He broke multiple records that still hold today. As great as his numbers were, some basketball historians believe the legacy of this year is tainted with how the team performed. But after going through the full story, you'll be able to see why we should view this season with such high regard. Here are the numbers that he posted. He averaged 34 points on 49% shooting, 11.4 assists, and 2.8 rebounds per game. He led the league in scoring and assists. He is the first and only player to ever accomplish this feat. But that's not the only thing he accomplished. That's the highest scoring average by any point guard in league history. We interrupt this program for an important disclaimer. For all intents and purposes, James Harden is a shooting guard and will forever be considered a shooting guard in the basketball universe. He will not be included in the point guard discussion. Back to the program. From a historical standpoint, he recorded the 13th most total points and the 21st most total assists for a single season. He is also only the second player to average over 30 points and 11 assists per game in a season. The only other player to record those numbers is Oscar Robertson. He did all that while leading the league in minutes played. He averaged 46 minutes per game. That is the 8th highest mark and is the highest by any player not named Wilt Chamberlain. This was coming from a player who was 6'1" and weighed about 150 pounds. He was usually the smallest player on the court, but he excelled in a league full of giants. For a player his size to post those kind of numbers was simply unthinkable at the time. The best point guards of his era were considered big guards. The Lakers were using Jerry West as their floor general in the final years of his career. The Knicks had Walt Frazier, and Oscar Robertson was never considered an undersized guard. But Archibald proved that a player his size could dominate the court as well as they could. He certainly paved the way for all the small and speedy point guards that arrived afterwards. It's also important to note how much his game had progressed. This was only his third season. As is for most young players, he struggled at first. In his rookie year, he wasn't expected to start. That role was originally given to Flynn Robinson. However, it was reported that he held out, so they named the rookie as one of the starting guards. His numbers were pretty good, as he averaged 16 points, 5.5 assists, and 3 rebounds per game. In his sophomore season, his numbers went up tremendously. He averaged 28.2 points, 9.2 assists, and 2.9 rebounds per game. As much as he improved, there were some growing pains. According to the New York Times, they wrote that he continued overhandling the ball, throwing it away, taking poor shots, and playing too out of control. They reported that the team seriously contemplated trading him. They needed a big man, and they considered offering him to Chicago for center Tom Boerwinkle. Instead, they made the wise decision of keeping him. But there are two moves that they made that allowed Tiny to have the type of season that he had. They traded away Norm Van Leer to the Chicago Bulls for Jim Fox. Norm actually led the league in assists in Tiny's rookie season. He would later play an important role for the Bulls in their many deep playoff runs that decade. Then, one of their main scoring options, Tom Van Arsdale, was also traded to the 76ers for John Block. They needed him to assume those roles, and he ended up making history. The things that he was doing caught the eyes of players and fans alike. Check out what some of his former rivals said about how incredible he was.
Here's a guy that you really hated to try to guard because he'd come at you a mile a minute. He was quick, he was fast, he was left-handed, he was a dominant scorer, and a guy that brought fear to a lot of us in the NBA.
He was a zealot about his physical fitness and health. He used to bring a rope, a jump rope. He would do that like 25 or 30 minutes prior to the game. I used to wonder, where does this guy get all this energy from?
Because, to come in there with all of the big trees, and back then you had a lot of centers in the game that were just planted down there. He would come in there and attack you, and you would say, I'm going to knock this guy on his butt. You would knock him on his butt, he'd come right back at you again.
Left-handed, but the thing that made Tiny great is that he was ambidextrous in scoring and going to the basket and scoring. Very few left-handers would score as much as Tiny did going to the basket.
Our team was so weak offensively that he literally carried us on his shoulder.
amazing we didn't wear him out.
You can't blame them for singing his praises. They were in awe of some of the things that he was doing. His speed, ball handling, and craftiness were too much for anyone to handle. That led him to have some historically great performances throughout that season. There were 3 total games where he posted over 50 points and 10 assists. Only James Harden in the 2018-19 season has been able to record games. His best game out of the 3 came against the Atlanta Hawks when he had 52 points on 68% shooting, 11 assists, and 8 rebounds. Then there was a game against the Detroit Pistons where he made more history. He had 41 points on 56% shooting, 21 assists, and 3 rebounds. That is only the 3rd time that anyone has ever recorded over 40 points and 20 assists. Oscar Robertson is the only other player to accomplish this rare feat. I mean, how could anyone hate on what he was doing? However, there's one aspect of this season that can't be ignored. As great as the numbers that he posted, the Kings finished the year with a 36-46 record. They failed to reach the playoffs. Should that taint the legacy of this season? Was this nothing but empty stats? Consider the context. Tiny Archibald was drafted in 1970, the same offseason that Oscar Robertson famously was traded to the Milwaukee Bucks. Even while having the greatest point guard up to that point, the Royals missed the playoffs from 1968 to 1970. Once they ended the Oscar Robertson era, it was clear that the Royals were in full rebuild mode. So a team that wasn't deep to begin with were even more talent poor in the first half of the 1970s. In reality, those monster numbers give us an idea of everything he had to do in order for his team to win games. The Kansas City Kings was a one-man offense, and their head coach Bob Cousy specifically designed their team that way. Putting the ball in his hands was their only hope of being competitive, and this young team would make fewer mistakes. When he wasn't present, the Kings suffered in a catastrophic way. There was one night he sat out a game with an ankle injury against the Detroit Pistons, and they lost by 44 points. It's clear that the only reason why they won as many games as they did was because of his high-level play. If there's one player who knew exactly what he was going through, it was Oscar Robertson. He was in his shoes for years. So when Sports Illustrated asked him if his ball-dominant style was hurting his team, he gave the reporter a serious look and said, the only way his style could hurt them is if he played against them. Chicago Bulls forward Bob Love had a similar response. He told the magazine that Nate's one of the most unselfish players in the game, that he's seen him go a whole quarter without shooting. He added that the fact that he led the league in assists explains his unselfishness. It's good to see that his contemporaries were defending him, but we haven't heard from him directly. According to that same article, this is what he said about his mentality. Quote, I was never a great scorer anyway. Anybody can score points, but running the ball club is different, and I can do that. Right now, I'm gonna have to score because we don't have the scoring punch of other teams. End of quote. I don't necessarily blame him for missing the postseason in a tough Western Conference where only 4 teams made the playoffs. Let's also keep in mind that the Milwaukee Bucks and the Lakers won 60 games and were pulverizing everyone. It just wasn't their time yet. Tiny Archibald did everything that he could for his team to win. That's all that he cared about. He fell short on that, but he ended up making history in the process. He also gave future generations of undersized point guards the blueprint on how to dominate the game. It makes you wonder what he could have accomplished if he had a better team around him during a time when he was young and healthy. But what about you all? Do you consider this one of the greatest seasons of all time? Should it matter how his team performed? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.